If you remember the satisfying click of a trapper keeper or the specific boredom of a rainy afternoon with only 4 TV channels, this is for you. If you learned to navigate the world using a printed map and a card catalog, yet now you manage digital teams across continents, you know exactly what it means to be a bridge. You're part of Generation X, the so-called forgotten generation, the Latchkey kids who were expected to just figure it out. While others were getting participation trophies, you were getting a house key and a pat on the back. This constant need to adapt and survive left an indelible mark on your mind. It shaped your entire way of thinking, problem-solving, and seeing the world. But what if that struggle wasn't a disadvantage at all? What if it forged a unique and powerful kind of genius? Gen X intelligence was not taught in a classroom. It was forged in an empty house with a broken VCR and a deadline. This is not about traditional IQ. It is about what we call survival intelligence, a unique psychological toolkit developed to navigate a world without guardrails. Over the next few minutes, we are going to decode the 4 core traits of this intelligence. We will explore how your experiences created these strengths, and most importantly, how you can leverage them in the modern world. And if you're already rolling your eyes or feeling a little skeptical about all this, that is perfect. In fact, you should stick around, because that healthy dose of skepticism is actually one of the core traits we're going to break down. You will soon discover it is more of a superpower than you might think. So let's start with the most obvious one, born from millions of empty houses in the afternoon. Radical independence and resourcefulness. You came home from school, the house was empty, and something was always broken or needed to be figured out. There was no YouTube tutorial to fix the bike chain, no Google to find the answer for your homework, and no parent to call for every minor crisis. You had a set of encyclopedias, the junk drawer, and your own brain. Psychologists would say this environment built a powerful internal locus of control. You learned bone deep that the solutions to your problems were your responsibility. This was not about following instructions. It was about figuring out the system when no instructions existed. This is a form of heuristic-based problem-solving, where you develop mental shortcuts and models based on past experience. Then you were the kid who could get the fuzzy VCR to play the rental tape by hitting it in just the right spot. Now you are the person in the office who, when the new software glitches, does not call IT, but instead just pokes around and figures it out before anyone else. You do not panic because the system is broken. You get curious. That is not just a skill. It is a fundamental mindset that is incredibly rare and valuable today. This ability to figure things out is crucial, but it is even more powerful when combined with the unique way Gen X uses humor to manage stress, which we will get to in a bit. But it is not just about being resourceful. The world you grew up in also taught you a crucial lesson about trust, which leads to our second survival intelligence, pragmatic skepticism. Remember that skepticism I mentioned earlier, the one you might be feeling right now? Let's dive into why that is not a flaw, but a feature. You grew up in the golden age of advertising hype, political scandals, and products that rarely lived up to the commercials. You saw the launch of New Coke and the hysteria around Cabbage Patch Kids. This constant exposure to a gap between promise and reality created an advanced form of critical thinking. Your skepticism is not negativity. It is a highly developed immune system against nonsense. You have a finely tuned ability for what psychologists call motivated reasoning detection. You can sense when someone is arguing for a conclusion they want to be true, rather than what is actually true. Then you were the kid who knew the miracle sea monkeys from the back of the comic book were just brine shrimp. Now you are the person in the meeting who asks the one simple question that unravels an entire half-baked marketing plan. You are not trying to be difficult. You are stress testing reality. It is an instinct for risk assessment that was trained into you by a world of charming lies. If this is resonating with you, that feeling of finally having your perspective understood, consider subscribing. We are all about decoding the psychology of misunderstood traits, so you are joining a community that just gets it. Does any of this sound familiar? That feeling of seeing the catch when everyone else is buying the hype? That is not negativity. It is a finely tuned survival instinct. But it was not all doom and gloom and learning not to trust people. You also got a front row seat to the biggest technological revolution in human history, which gave you our third trait, analog to digital fluency. No other generation in history has had to fundamentally rewire their brain's approach to information mid-life. You learned systems thinking from a mixtape, not a spreadsheet, carefully curating a flow and a mood. Remember writing a school report by first going to the library, finding the right drawer in the card catalog, locating the book, and then cross-referencing with an encyclopedia? That slow, methodical process taught you about information architecture, patience, and how knowledge is structured. Then you learned Boolean searches for Alta Vista and the art of the dial-up modem shriek. This makes you cognitively bilingual, a master of what we can call cognitive bridging. You can understand the logic of the old manual filing system and the logic of the new cloud-based database. This fluency makes you an invaluable translator in a world where older execs and younger employees often speak completely different languages. Then you were the person who had to explain to your parents how to program the VCR to stop flashing 12 o'clock. Now you are the person who can explain to the 60-year-old CEO why the 25-year-old social media manager's plan makes sense, and vice versa. You are not a digital native or a digital dinosaur. You are a digital immigrant who remembers the old country, and that gives you wisdom no one else has. Now, let's connect this back to that resourcefulness we talked about. When things inevitably go wrong, the Gen-Xer does not just solve the problem, they cope with it using a tool no one else has mastered, called apathusiasm and dark humor. The whatever attitude, the sarcasm, the eye roll that seems to say, of course this is on fire. To outsiders, it can look like apathy or negativity. But it is actually a highly sophisticated emotional regulation strategy. Growing up with the background noise of potential nuclear annihilation, economic recessions, and societal upheaval taught you a crucial lesson. You cannot control the world, but you can control your reaction to it. Psychologists might call this cynical optimism, or a form of stress inoculation. By expecting things to go wrong, you are never surprised when they do, which allows you to remain calm and analytical while others are panicking. The dark joke is not a sign of despair. It is a tool to create emotional distance, allowing your resourceful brain to get to work on the actual problem. Then you were the teen who used sarcasm to deal with an absurdly difficult teacher or a tense family holiday. Now, you are the manager who, when a major project launch fails spectacularly, cracks a dry joke that breaks the tension and lets the team start looking for a solution instead of pointing fingers. Your calm in the storm is not apathy. It is mastery. Imagine walking into your next meeting not as the cynical one, but as the essential realist who saves the team from chasing a dead end.
That is the power we are talking about. Okay, enough nostalgia.
This is not just a history lesson. How do you use this? Here is your playbook, which uses a simple framework of recognize, reframe, and apply. First, for radical resourcefulness, volunteer for the problem no one else wants, the one with no clear instructions.
That is your playground.
Second, for pragmatic skepticism, consciously step into the role of the designated hype checker on new projects. Frame your questions not as doubt, but as a way to make the idea stronger. Third, for your analog to digital fluency, actively seek out roles where you can be the bridge. Share your office politics insights with a junior teammate and let them teach you the newest app. Finally, for your dark humor, the next time there's a crisis, deploy it consciously, not to dismiss the problem, but to manage the room's anxiety so everyone can think clearly. So we have independence, skepticism, cognitive bridging, and dark humor. When you put it all together, what does it actually mean for you today? It means all those times you felt out of step, misunderstood, or overlooked were not because you were lacking something. It was because you were operating with a different and in many ways more robust psychological operating system. So that struggle we talked about at the beginning? It was not a disadvantage, it was your training ground. The empty house was not a punishment. It was a laboratory for ingenuity. You are not the forgotten generation. You are the bridge generation, and you might just be the reason the two sides can still talk to each other. Thanks for exploring this with me. If you want more insights into the psychology of how we think and live, make sure to subscribe. And now, I want to hear from you. What is the most Gen X trait or experience that I missed? Let me know in the comments below.